Well, it was a historic day yesterday. Republicans have delivered on their promise. Amy Coney Barrett has been confirmed to the Supreme Court. The Democrats are raving mad, and they are promising retribution. And what has Joe Biden already vowed to do if he's elected? And what drastic impact could it have on our country? Paul Strand has more.
So great. A month to the day after President Trump nominated Amy Coney Barrett, Justice Clarence Thomas swore her in at a White House ceremony. Still, her opponents fought to the very end, insisting her confirmation process was rushed and wrong.
This Republican majority is ramming this nomination through only because they can.
Barrett backers maintain the process followed the Constitution, and the president spoke of Barrett's sacred place in history.
Justice Barrett, as you take your oath tonight, the legacy of our ancestors falls to you. The American people put their trust in you and their faith in you as you take up the task of defending our laws, our Constitution, and this country that we all love.
I love the Constitution and the democratic republic that it establishes, and I will devote myself to preserving it.
After this party line confirmation vote, all eyes will be on the election to see if Democrats take back the Senate and then follow through on threats of consequences like expanding the court with enough liberal justices to undo this conservative majority. Joe Biden told 60 Minutes one of his first acts as president would be appointing a bipartisan commission on the subject.
I will ask them to, over 180 days, come back to me with recommendations as to how to reform the court system, because it's getting out of whack.
The Democrats will, if they take the White House, the House, and the Senate, change the rules dramatically and change the country dramatically by expanding the size of the Supreme Court, going from 9 to 11 or 13. And that's just one of the list of horribles that I think they would put into place.
Though Barrett didn't face a full-on assault like Brett Kavanaugh, Republican James Lankford blasted the tactics used against his mother of 2 adopted black children.
Even this candidate is being challenged as a racist, quiet segregationist. It is the firebomb thrown into the middle of a dialogue.
He said those Democrats probably don't actually believe Barrett is a racist.
I have every confidence that the members on the other side would say no, but it plays well to the base.
Meanwhile, Senator Josh Hawley celebrated Barrett's confirmation.
Tonight, we will set a precedent that people of faith, people of the convictions that Judge Barrett has and shares, are welcome in this country in every office. They are welcome on the highest court in the land.
Justice Barrett's first case will likely be about Catholic social services getting kicked out of the foster care business with the city of Philadelphia because it refused to back away from the biblical teaching of one man, one woman marriage. The case comes before the court November 4th, a day after the election. Paul Strand, CBN News, Washington.
You know, Joe Biden has ducked the question. He talks about he's going to examine, he'd have a commission to examine the courts because they're, quote, out of whack. Well, what's out of whack about the fact that the Constitution says the president selects the Supreme Court justices, the Senate, in advice and consent, confirms them? I mean, what's the big deal about that? There was a vacancy, and the president, under his constitutional authority, filled the vacancy with an unbelievably superb judge. And the thing was, the people who around the country overwhelmingly supported her appointment. And she stands for working women, she stands for mothers, she stands for caring, compassionate people, and she's a person of faith. Unbelievable. But this, you know, you go back to court packing. Franklin Roosevelt was more popular than any president probably in the history of America. He had a ironclad majority in the House and the Senate, and he began to bring forth programs, the NRA and things like that, to bring this country forward out of the Depression. And the Supreme Court began to block his moves. And he wanted to have the Reconstruction Finance Corporation. He wanted to have all these things. And the Supreme Court began to vote against it. So Roosevelt, the most popular president that has ever been, probably next to George Washington, and he says, I am going to appoint 5 more judges. For each judge that I think is misbehaving, I'll get a companion piece, and it's called court packing. And you know, the Democrats were in control of Congress, and they said, no way, FDR, we're not going along with it. And he went down in flames on that issue. Now the Democrats are trying to bring that up again. That's what court packing is. You add justices, and instead of having 9 justices, he wanted to add 5 more. No way. His own party turned against him. The American people won't stand for it. But that's what Joe Biden, I'm going to get a commission to study this. Well, he's ducking the issue, and the American people don't want it. Whew. Okay, no way. Now, in other news, 7 days to go until the election, but a record number of people have already voted. And what might that mean for the final outcome? John Jessup has more on that.
Thanks, Pat. Early voting surging to new highs across the country. So far, more than 62 million people have already cast their ballots. That's about 45% of the total vote in 2016. With Election Day 1 week away, the candidates are targeting voters in battleground states. Joe Biden making a surprise trip to Georgia today. No Democrat has won that state since Bill Clinton in 1992. But recent polling shows the race a dead heat there. President Trump stumping hard in those blue wall states that he took from Democrats in 2016, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. The former vice president is hammering Trump on as COVID cases rise, while the president is banking on an economic rebound.
The bottom line is Donald Trump is the worst possible president, the worst possible person to try to lead us through this pandemic.
You see the numbers, the housing numbers, the automobile numbers, all the numbers, the way they're coming back at a level that nobody's the job numbers. 11.4 million jobs in a short period of time. We will be back very quickly.
The stock market dropped 650 points Monday on news of rising coronavirus cases across the country. However, a new report coming out later this week is expected to show the economy grew at a record rate last quarter, as much as 30% or more. Well, Joe Biden is perceived as a moderate liberal. But what about his running mate, California Senator Kamala Harris? She's publicly supported progressive policies and has been rated the most liberal member of the Senate. And as Mark Martin reports, when asked in a recent interview if she's a socialist, she responded with laughter.
60 Minutes and CBS anchor Norah O'Donnell pointed out that Joe Biden and his running mate, Senator Kamala Harris, are very different in the policies that they've supported in the past. She went on to say that Harris is considered the most liberal United States senator.
Somebody said that, and it actually was Mike Pence on the debate stage. But
yeah, well, actually, the nonpartisan GovTrack has rated you as the most liberal senator. You supported the Green New Deal. You supported Medicare for all. You've supported legalizing marijuana. Joe Biden doesn't support those things. So are you going to bring the policies, those progressive policies that you supported as senator, into a Biden administration?
What I will do, and I promise you this, and this is what Joe wants me to do, this was part of our deal. I will always share with him my lived experience as it relates to any issue that we confront.
When O'Donnell asked if her perspective was socialist or progressive, Harris responded with laughter again, which prompted criticism on social media.
No, it is the perspective of a woman who grew up a black child in America, who was also a prosecutor, who also has a mother who arrived here at the age of 19 from India, who also, you know, likes hip hop. Like, what do you want to know?
Harris got her start in California politics when State Assembly Speaker Willie Brown appointed her to the first of 2 state board positions in 1994. That move created controversy as the two dated while Brown was separated from his wife. After that relationship ended, Brown took credit for influencing Harris's career, so much so that when she ran for San Francisco DA in 2003, Harris referred to him as an albatross hanging around my neck. When it comes to 2020, another hanger-on could be when, as a presidential candidate, she came out against fracking in the fossil fuel industry.
There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking.
In her vice presidential debate, she had this to say about Biden.
Joe Biden will not ban fracking. That is a fact.
That is a fact.
During the Democratic primary, Harris supported taxpayer-funded abortions, saying they would rescue the lives of lower-income women. While Harris is moving more toward the middle as Biden's running mate, critics wonder if the Green New Deal co-sponsor would run back to the left in a Biden administration. Mark Martin, CBN News.
Thanks, Mark. And one thing's for sure, Pat, she is a campaign fundraising juggernaut for the Democrats.
The thing is, Biden was asked, does she have the quality to be the commander-in-chief? And he basically said yes. If I'm only one term or I'm disabled because of my age, she's going to take over. And we want to ask again, what does she believe? Well, what is this Green New Deal? What they say, well, he won't ban fracking. Yes, he will. He came out against all fossil fuels. He is going to take away all fossil fuel. He said it, that he would turn away from use of any fossil fuel. And that means the oil industry. It also means the petrochemical industry and all the people involved in it. And we're talking about thousands of jobs. Well, what do you do if you have to drive an electric car? Well, there aren't any electric cars to speak of, and they're much more expensive than normal cars, the ones we're used to driving with so-called fossil fuels, gasoline. So what do you do about that? Well, that's just tough luck. We're going to watch and see what happens. Well, you have to have taxes to put a new a highway out there for those cars, and you got to have filling stations for them. And you take away ethanol because that would hurt the corn states, and ethanol is now added into the petroleum we use. And you go down the list, you stop burning coal, and it means that the power industry is going to be crippled. And the prospects of some of the things, this Green New Deal, are so frightening. The American people should be aware of it because it will cost millions of dollars. And they've also said, and they've said repeatedly, we will not raise taxes. But we're also going to do away with the president's tax cuts. Well, if you do away with the president's tax cuts, that means you will have more taxes. And he has said, I don't want to raise taxes. So we're looking at a frightening scenario, and I think the American people need to be aware. They need to ask questions, and it's an amazing thing that nobody is asking those questions, but somebody should, because we're looking at what could be a transformation of our total economy and the transformation of our Supreme Court, et cetera, if this crowd gets in power. Well, we'll see what happens. John?
Pat, turning to the latest storm heading for the U.S. Gulf Coast, Zeta hit Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula as a Category 1 hurricane Monday, temporarily dropping in power as it passed over land, but it is expected to regain hurricane strength before hitting the Gulf Coast sometime Wednesday. Hurricane warnings extend from Morgan City, Louisiana, to the Mississippi-Alabama border. If it hits Louisiana, Zeta will set a record for the number of named storms to strike the state in one season. Louisiana Governor John Bel Edwards said residents are getting ready and that they've had plenty of practice so far this year. Pat?
Well, I think we really should pray for those people in Louisiana. I was down in New Orleans after Katrina, and the devastation is just enormous, the suffering that takes place, and to be hit time and time and time again is going to cause enormous suffering. And I might say our Operation Blessing is poised to move in right after anything happens, but they look like a storm surge coming in, terrible wind to strike Louisiana, Mississippi, and that Gulf Coast area. So please pray for our fellow citizens and friends who live in that area, because it can be devastating. But one right after the other. I mean, this is unbelievable what's happening. And not only is it going to happen in the Gulf, there are bad things happening in California. John?
That's right, Pat. Nonstop wildfires there in the Golden State, still consuming the state. High winds are fueling a new fire that spread quickly near Los Angeles, putting tens of thousands at risk. CBN's Jenna Browder brings us the story.
The Silverado Fire exploded within just a few hours of breaking out Monday in Orange County. The fast-moving wildfire forcing more than 150,000 people to evacuate and injuring 2 firefighters. gusty winds and dry conditions fanning this rapidly growing blaze. The Silverado Fire now spanning more than 7,000 acres.
Our priority right now is getting people evacuated and out of the path of the fire.
Hundreds of firefighters are battling massive flames as they try to force back the fire from the freeways. Fueled by the Santa Ana winds gusting up to 70 miles per hour, firefighters say their hands are tied until the winds die down.
This is a tough fire. We're experiencing winds, very high winds, very low humidities.
A downed power line could be the cause of the Silverado Fire. With high winds threatening to bring down more lines, authorities have cut power to more than 300,000 customers across the state. And overnight, California's governor secured assistance from FEMA for more resources to hopefully gain the upper hand in the coming days. Jenna Browder, CBN News.
Thanks, Jenna. Turning overseas, Turkey's President Erdogan is taking aim at French President Emmanuel Macron over his plans to reform Islamic practices in his country. Macron announced plans to restrict foreign funds from going to Muslim communities in France, and more than 50 Muslim associations could be shut down if they're found to be promoting hatred. France has suffered several attacks at the hands of radical Muslims. The most recent, the public beheading of a school teacher who showed his students pictures caricaturing the Prophet Muhammad. Macron has said that he wants to build an Islam of the Enlightenment in France. Erdogan is accusing Macron of violating religious freedom and saying he, quote, needs treatment at a mental level. And Pat, this just represents the growing chasm between these two NATO nations.
As I've said, Erdogan is a thug. He is a vicious dictator. He has taken over the Hagia Sophia, the great church in Istanbul that was the center of Orthodox Christianity. He's turned it into a mosque. And he wants to be a caliphate, a caliph of the old Muslim caliphate. And when we look at prophecy, Turkey is the Gog and Magog that we talk about coming against Israel. But now he's saying that the president of France has a mental condition because he wants to limit the radical Islam in France, and well, he should. But that's the kind of thing we're up against. But keeping your eye on prophecy because it's going to develop, and Turkey's going to be at the heart of something. And before long, they'll be moving against Israel. It'll be a terrible war, but that's in the future. But it's coming. But Erdogan, you know, I'm sorry he came over and the president said nice things about him, and we all knew better. And he is a vicious, vicious dictator.